Good evening, everybody. Welcome to CW Live. My name is Chris Webb, Head of Communications. Good evening and welcome to this absolutely vital session. I'm joined today by our General Secretary, Dave Ward, and our Acting Deputy General Secretary, Postal, Andy Hurie. Evening, gentlemen.
Evening. Well, hi, everybody.
Good to have you. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments. It's good to get a feel for the number of offices and units and areas and branches that are represented on the call tonight. So please do that. You know, as I said just then, tonight is really important for you, for the union, for everyone who works for Royal Mail. We are going to tonight get everything out on the table. Not a subject avoided, nothing ducked, every single thing dealt with head on. There's not another union in the UK who would even dream of a session like this, but this isn't just a union. This is your union. It's vital that you have your say in the next steps over the coming weeks. And you don't even need to be in the comments panicking now. I'll tell you exactly what we're going to put to Dave and Andy. We're going to ask them if this agreement's good enough. We're going to be asked them if you've been sold out. We're going to ask Dave and Andy if the union bottled it. Can we trust Royal Mail? We're going to go through later start sick and ill health pay. We're going to ask them if the £900 is a bribe and why are managers getting it. We're going to ask them why you should pay the price for Royal Mail's financial mismanagement. We're going to talk about our colleagues who have been so outrageously treated, dismissed and suspended all over the UK. And of course, we'll also cover parcel force, fleet, engineering, and much, much more. So now you know the questions you've been asking, the things you've been putting, you're going to see all those questions answered tonight. But I've got a request for you, everyone watching. We're the union, we're on the same side, and we together have come through hell in this dispute. So we're asking you to breathe before smashing the comment box. You listen to what Dave and Andy have got to say, and then let the people post their genuine questions so we can pick them up and then not lost in the sea of people trying to spam them. Because if you do that, we're not going to be able to get through this session. So this is going to be a big one. We're not going to leave anything unchallenged. And if Dave and Andy, if you don't feel their bit questions have been answered properly, I'll make sure that I come back in on your behalf and ask those questions. On that note, thank you for everyone letting us know where they're watching from. Can see you all on comments. That's fantastic. I'm going to ask Dave Ward, General Secretary, to make an opening statement.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for coming on. We're looking forward to a good and a lively session, no doubt. We're not here to avoid any single issue. We're not apologising for the position that we're putting to our members in the ballot. What we want is a proper and honest debate about the agreement, the circumstances surrounding it, and the alternatives to it. And what's important then is it'll be over to our members to have their say. That's what it's all about. The members will ultimately cast their vote. We ask that our members use their vote when that moment comes in the next few days. And we also ask that you, when you do vote, you do so on the most informed basis possible. That's really important. We're going to say to you that the decision to suspend the original ballot timetable wasn't about hiding away, and that decision has been fully justified. So what we've seen since then, one, is a really, really strong statement that commits Royal Mail and the union and every local office to restoring quality of service in the USO immediately. It commits everybody to agreeing an action plan, and it commits everybody to utilising the IR framework agreement if we can't get that action plan, as well as if we can't review the revisions that Royal Mail implemented during the dispute. That's all part of the latest statement. Why is that statement any different to the other ones where Royal Mail haven't honoured some of those statements? Well, we had a meeting yesterday, a national Zoom meeting with every single manager and every single rep locally, where they heard from the senior manager. One of the guys who's been leading the charge against the union was there making it clear to his managers, to our reps, that they have got to utilise our industrial framework agreement now, and restoring quality in the USO is the number one priority for the company. And as part of that, as I said, making sure that revisions that Royal Mail implemented during the dispute are now properly reviewed. Look, we all understand there's some very difficult elements to this agreement. That was always going to be the case, given the magnitude of this dispute, given the unparalleled set of circumstances that have happened during the course of the dispute and were there in many ways at the start of the dispute. And also given the fact that there's been a huge shift in the world of communications. And if we're going to have a proper debate about this agreement, then we have got to be willing to recognise some realities that are out there and have been out there all the time around this dispute. One of them, let's deal with management. We don't take anything back on what we've said about Royal Mail management during the course of this dispute. In reaching this agreement, we ain't making excuses for the behaviour of Royal Mail managers. What they've done in terms of the decisions they've made over the finances of the business, the decisions they made to walk away from the original pathway to change agreement, which we still don't believe there's been an honest discussion about from the company as to the reasons why they did that. And of course, the appalling way that they treated members and are still treating members in some places. All of that remains unacceptable, the way they fitted up our reps. But our argument to all of that is the best way of dealing with those managers is through this national agreement. If we don't want to do that, then we're giving them the green light to continue doing exactly what they were doing. Ain't going to change overnight. We've got to work our way through the agreement now, but we believe this is the way to hold those managers to account. On Royal Mail's finances, we stand by everything we said about the way that this company and the board and the senior management mismanaged grossly the financial position of Royal Mail. When they took that decision, rather than to invest in the workforce, invest in the change agreement, when they took that decision to give away over £600 million to shareholders, that was wrong then and it's wrong today. But I'm going to say to you as well that the fact of the matter is now, don't like how we got here. We don't agree with Royal Mail. It was a self-inflicted financial crisis that they've put upon everybody in this company. The truth of the matter is, though, and you saw it in the accounts that were posted the other week, we are now in a financial perilous situation. And if we can't accept that now, then we're not going to make the right judgments about the future of our members' jobs. And again, the point that we would make, if we're going to get out of the financial crisis that they've created, the best and only way we're going to do that is through this agreement. Then I want to talk about change. We've often said, you've heard us saying it on the TV, we were never facing away from change. This wasn't about stopping change. It was about how change was going to be introduced. And there is no way that we can protect any jobs in this company going forward or the future of Royal Mail on the basis of some kind of view of how Royal Mail used to be or how it is today. The world of communications is changing around us rapidly. The digital world is upon us now. And the only way we're going to move Royal Mail forward is we've got to be out there delivering parcels right across the day and into the evening. If we don't want to do that, then there is no future for Royal Mail. That alongside the other part of this agreement that can give us an opportunity to expand the role of postal workers, which Royal Mail have now properly signed up to. And we're going to properly work on that going forward, and frontline employees will be involved in that. That is the best way to deal with change. Change don't go away through not having a deal. Don't anybody delude yourselves or listen to people who are suggesting that that's an alternative, because it isn't. The future has to be about change. It's in our interests. It's in the interests of the customers that Royal Mail serves, and it's in the interests of the future of the company. I'm also going to say to you about later starts, later finishes. We know what an emotive issue that is. And the other thing, of course, that we've done with a recent joint statement is we've now given information that each office can see, which is the worst case scenario. That information's now out there, and we can have that debate later on during the course of this session. And of course, finally, we've also delivered the additional lump sum that we've been talking about. So there's another £900 on the table. So look, we're here, as Chris said, we want it all out on the table. We want to have an honest debate about the future. And at the end of that, we believe that the right decision for our members is to support this agreement.
Thanks, Dave. That's great. So we're going to get right into your questions now. As I said, we're not going to dodge anything, Andy. I think I want to come to you first, if I can, and I want to, talk to you about the environment in which our members are in. You see comments, people saying that you and Dave and the officers, executive don't understand what's going on in the workplaces. You're not seeing what people are being put through. You're not seeing the bullying, the harassment, the failures of USO, the quality of service, people telling them to prioritise track parcels, the absolute disaster. What I saw one member today who said his revision's a disaster and they've been told to take another 200 hours out of the offices. How could we even consider putting this agreement to Royal Mail? And how could we even have an ounce of trust that they're about to change when even during the balloting period where we go now, they're still sticking the boot into our members, Andy?
Well, first and foremost, all of the union's leadership definitely has the finger on the pulse of what's going on in the workplace. We know it's a war zone out there. We know the environment's toxic, and we know what's been going on is completely unacceptable. But if anybody believes that voting no is going to make that better, that situation better, they are deluding themselves. There's no doubt about it. The way to turn this around and the way to re-establish decent working environments is to get behind the agreement. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And that's why the Post Executive endorsed the agreement. But we need to address these issues. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that first and foremost, the employer at the start of this dispute set out to destroy the union and its influence in the workplace. This agreement ensures that we will have an influence going forward, and we've got to put right all of those problems. And that's why yesterday there was the joint Zoom call led by Dave and Royal Mail to address the issues with all of the managers and all of the reps. Clearly, our reps have got to get in there and ensure that they hold the management to account and use the agreement to their best endeavours.
Thanks, Andy. I mean, Dave, touching on what Andy said there, isn't there a sense so you can understand from the members' perspective of, what Andy's saying there all sounds great. We're going to get in. We've got a chance to fix the revisions, but we've heard this before. This is the third joint statement Royal Mail have taken not an iota of notice of the other joint statements. People are struggling in the offices. People can't complete. People are feeling the pressure. What is different? Because let's be honest about it, we had a manager's call with Grant McPherson yesterday, and then today people are getting told there's no overtime and they got to lapse more walks and they got more pressure on them.
Yeah, so I mean, look, we know that there is difficult issues out there in local offices, and I think it's time now for the union and its structure to shift the mindset now towards that we are going to use these statements. The industrial relations framework is the key tool, if you like, that starts to address these issues properly. And with the company at the moment, I mean, we can't do no more than get the guy who's led the charge in telling every single manager and all of the other senior people in the company have told every single manager that the union ain't going to be here. We can't do no more than get him on a screen with meetings with every single local rep, every single local manager. And he said to the managers, you have got to put right quality of service in the USO. Otherwise, the company can't survive. The company can't grow unless it's delivering quality of service. He said to them, you've got to use the industrial relations framework. Now, look, we can't do revisions by remote control. There's no point in us keep telling each other how bad it is. It's about now the whole of the union structure using those statements, getting back into the industrial relations framework and holding these people to account. The other thing I would say, where obviously it's very difficult in delivery, is that the company, people like in delivery to get on with the job. They know how to do the job, and they don't like being told every single minute, this is what you've got to do today, this is what you're going to do in the next couple of hours. But, I'm going to say to you that they can't make you work more than the hours you're being paid. And what we got to do is put it to them now that the best way of solving these problems is to start listening to some of the frontline workers and to start listening to the local reps and to use the structures, the branches. We expect the branches to be out there now, the divisions in the union. You know, people at headquarters can't deal with every local situation. I'm going to say to you that, yes, I recognise that there's a lot of offices that are really, really struggling because they've cut too deep. But there are also offices where they're going out there and our reps are getting agreements. And actually, they're starting to take some control back of the local office environment. There's one thing for certain here. Royal Mail are running out of road now. They can't carry on doing what they've been doing. They've got to start putting it right. And, you know, we're going to say it again, the best way of putting it right is to utilise the IR framework, play the clip if needs be, of the manager telling the local manager that they've got to utilise proper industrial relations and they've got to agree the way forward locally. That's what he said the other day. That's what the IR framework says. You know, it is really now about making a concerted effort locally through branches, through the area reps supporting our local reps, through the divisional reps, and taking on some of these managers in that way. If we do that, we will improve the situation.
Thanks, Dave. And I want to get on to some of the agreement stuff, the £900 lump sum. I want to start by saying, you know, we communicated that we were seeking an additional lump sum a long time ago. We've given members a little bit of updates along the way. It's quite sensitive. So we made that declaration quite early. But we have got members, a number of questions I'd be interested to put to you. One, people saying like it's a bribe to get an agreement over the line. The union's leadership's panicking over a no vote. We're trying to shoehorn another 900 quid at it, working with a company. Secondly, people saying that's our own money. You're just giving it back to us. You're just recycling. And then, you know, a pool of people who are, you know, upset that managers seem to be getting the payment. Why are managers getting the payment? These are people that broke our picket lines, undermined our disputes, got bonus after bonus themselves. You know, why should we, you know, share what it should be a payment to us with those managers? Andy?
Well, look, first and foremost, Dave and I and the other officers tabled a claim back in October to Simon Thompson and his negotiating team that we should use the escrow monies to support an overall pay agreement. And the employer, we could tell straight away that they had already had their eyes on that escrow money to use for other purposes. So we pushed them hard that our members should have the benefit of that money. And let's be absolutely clear, it's nearly £200 million, and it's not the members' money. The members haven't contributed to that £200 million. It's Royal Mail's money. And with the agreement of the trustee, and there has to be an agreement, they signed a contract with the trustee that escrow monies would be there to support a pension fund should it get in trouble. What has happened is the trustee has made a decision, and we're talking about people that are elected and appointed to the trustee board, and they have made a decision that the scheme is in rude health, the RMPP, which was closed to new entrants on the 1st of April 2018. So there's no new people going into the scheme. But the reality is we have fought hard to get that money for our members. Now, nearly 80 million is going to be used to set up, to contribute to the new CDC scheme that we're optimistic will come in early in the new year. That's important that scheme is delivered. It's a brand new scheme, and that funding of that extra funding is extremely helpful. The balance of the money is going to every single person in Royal Mail. That's members that were in the scheme, members that are not in the scheme. It includes our cleaners as well that are not in this bargaining unit, and our engineers, and it includes managers as well. Now, we had no say in the fact that managers will get the payment. That was a decision by Royal Mail. It's Royal Mail's money. But look, the bottom line here is we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say we don't want the money just because managers are getting it. We need to ensure that that money is used for the benefit of our members. We would have liked to have announced it from the outset that it was a done deal, but these negotiations were complex, and it wasn't just the ability of the CW and Royal Mail to reach an agreement on it. We had to get the trustee approval. As soon as that trustee approval was reached, we made the announcement, but we did herald that we were seeking to get extra money for our members. It's the way forward. It's the right approach, and it was the CWU who made that claim and sought to get that money for our members.
Thank you, Andy. You go back to the start of the midway through the dispute. Sorry, we've had 18 days of action. We've got loads of media coverage. Thompson's at the select committee being utterly humiliated. Public opinion is on the side of the posties. The momentum is with us. We've just had another ballot result, and people have for the third time have overwhelmingly supported the union. Accusations that at that point we were at our strongest, and at that juncture we should have gone for the jugular. We should have called more strike action. We should have potentially gone all out. We should have called a week's action. And moving on from that accusation, why didn't we? Did the union bottle it at that point? Is it a case of this union lost its nerve and the leadership of the union lost its nerve at that point, Dave?
So look, when we make decisions, we weigh everything up, and that's what you would expect us to do. And what we began to understand more and more clearly as the dispute moved forward was that the financial position, the crisis, if you like, that we're in now, was becoming real. We got our own independent people in to look at Royal Mail's books. We got experts in the whole field of the future of businesses and what would happen if the company went into administration. And we made the right call. So, it's not a question of people not being prepared to take more strike action. But, as we said repeatedly, it's never always about taking strike action. It's about reaching an agreement. And the judgment that we made, and that what leadership is really about, is to make the right judgments at the right time, was that by taking further strike action at that point, wouldn't have put any more money on the table, wouldn't have made the potential leverage that we had in negotiations anymore. It would have actually started to work against us. And I think most of our members who have followed this throughout the dispute know that. So, absolutely not. No question of us being afraid to take the employer on. We've been doing that for years and years. But if you're in a leadership position of the union, you've got to tell people the truth. You've got to work through situations. And we made the right call at the right time. It would not have got any better. It would have started to work against our own members. And I think our members would have seen that at that point. And there's nobody that would have thanked us for pushing the company into administration. I've heard all the debates about, the government would have had to take it back into public ownership. The government wouldn't have done that. What the government would have done was ensured that the universal service had to be dealt with, and then they would have come for the universal service. But what they would have definitely done is take all the rest of the stuff that Royal Mail do away from them. And that would have been a loss of thousands upon thousands of jobs immediately. So, anybody saying that it was right to go forward then. But once we went through Christmas, the key debate was to get the second yes vote and then get the deal. And that's what we've done.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. And so on the back of, the question I just put to Dave there, Andy, about, could we have called more strike action? Could we, and should we have got more from negotiations? Months and months and months we were in there, in total, probably a year. I mean, obviously intensified more towards the end in the latter period of that after the strikes and the magnificent yes votes from the members. But do you feel, honestly, that this is the best deal we could have got via negotiations for our members?
Yes, I do, and so does the Post executive. Look, hand on heart, we fought tooth and nail to get the best possible deal for the members. No doubt in my mind about that. Indeed, much of the pressure that was on us as a negotiating team was to have done a deal sooner. We were constantly being asked when we were going to reach an agreement. Now, we made the conscious decision not to make an agreement early on because it would have been inferior. We hung out to get the best possible deal, and that's why it took months and months of protracted and very, very difficult negotiations. Bearing in mind, the company set out to destroy the CWU and its influence in the workplace. This mantra, it's our company or business to run, was what was driving their attitude in the negotiations. Also, what was driving their attitude in the negotiations is they wanted to save millions and millions, hundreds of millions of pounds in cost savings to deal with the financial crisis that Dave has spoken about. And against that backdrop of a financial crisis, we also had to extract them a reasonable pay agreement, a pay agreement that will put £1.4 billion worth of money into our members' pockets over a 3-year period.
Thank you, Andy. Somebody's just said on social media that we rehearsed the session, so we must be pretty good at rehearsing because we're live. Look, ask us a question. I can tell you we're definitely live. People want to know, Dave, I want to pick up on slightly changing it if I can to people who are planning to vote no, which is I can see in the comments like a significant number, way more than the union would ever want in this scenario, and probably in the last 10 years or so. I mean, if I think back, and we've all talked about this before, there's been agreements in the past which have gone in 50-50 and all sorts of stuff. You think of the way forward and employee agenda, etc., which have been controversial. But in latter years, we haven't had that type of agreement. But one of the things that is interesting about the comments is lots of, not lots, but a fair few members are saying like, vote no, I'm voting no, etc. I'm interested, by the way, in the comments, if you set out, it'd be good if you set out, the rationale, because I want to draw out those questions. But to you, Dave, like, what would you say to the members who are saying, we're going to vote no, we don't think this is good enough? And wrapped up on that, a lot of people who are saying that are saying they want to know the union's plan B. It's not my job as a member to give you a plan B. It should be yours to have a plan B. So what are the consequences of a no vote? And, do you think that, that is an avenue the union should consider?
So let's go through that. Let's talk about what the options are, because whenever we've had this debate, and it's very easy to say online that we're voting no, but you've got to have a debate about what is it do you think is going to be achieved by that, and let's go through all of the issues. So one option for us, Plan B. And by the way, we'll respect the outcome of any vote. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're a democratic union. But one option is to take more strike action. Do you really believe, does anybody really listening to this debate, knowing the circumstances that we've talked about, thinking somehow that is going to extract more money from the company? We're just at a point now where the company and ourselves, I think, know that we've battered each other for the best part of over a year. And we've got to now try and deal with this through an agreement. So there's no more money to be had. So, don't anybody get carried away by that. So then what's it about the change? So, can we have this debate as well? I'm going to say something here. With or without this dispute, with or without this group of managers who we think have acted appallingly, we will still be facing change. Now, so what is it you're trying to achieve? Royal Mail as it used to be years ago, Royal Mail as it is today, can't survive in the future. And we'd be sitting in front of you with an agreement, probably the pathway to change agreement that you all voted for, that wasn't as developed. And I'm going to also say that it was inevitable that some of these issues would have arisen once, if we were allowed to go through the pathway to change agreement. But what we've been able to do is stop the worst excesses of what Royal Mail wanted to do. They didn't want the existing workforce. They wanted a whole group of unlimited numbers of self-employed drivers. That is the reality of the sector we're now in. And, the voting no option, I don't understand what people are telling us that they think is going to get better. So let's deal again with later starts, later finishes. There's a hell of a lot of people. We totally respect the fact that, that is really difficult for a lot of people. For some people, maybe impossible. But you can't hold up the future of a whole industry on the basis that you're going to protect something that is going to end up in nobody having any jobs. I mean, it don't make any sense. And it's will in the world. We listen a lot to our members, to our reps, but when I speak to postal workers, I haven't yet heard one of them who can make a convincing argument, and don't even often attempt to, because most of them say to us, we get the fact that there's got to be change. What this agreement does, it is so much better on every single issue that gives us the opportunity to deal with change through this agreement in the right way, in the best way possible. So the problem with the alternative voting no, please tell us what it is you expect to get rid of out of the deal. Let's take new entrants and sick absence, two very difficult issues. On the questions of that, the best way to deal with the new entrants is through the agreement, because Royal Mail have agreed to consider alternative approaches, and you all know they ain't going to attract people on the basis of those terms and conditions. So they're going to have to shift their position. And on sick absence, we've got an agreement now that gives us a chance to reverse the worst aspects of that. So, there is nothing to be gained in terms of voting no. There's no other option other than unless people think that the fight is about no change. But as I said, look, we'll respect the outcome of the vote, whatever way it goes.
Thanks, Dave. I'm going to come straight back to you if I can. Sorry, Andy, just to pick up on something you've just said there. Joe McCluskey's put, you guys marched us halfway up the hill and you've left us stranded. There's a feeling that accepting what you're saying there, Dave, I'm sure many members do, some may not, is that, we felt a momentum and a feeling that we were going to roll over Royal Mail. And I just wondered, to give that opportunity, really, because, we've been in so many disputes over the years as a union, haven't we? And sometimes I think back, I've seen a question just now, which said, what happened to no strings pay rise, which was the start of this dispute, wasn't it? And I think, mate, that context of the government involvement, the media, the war chest Royal Mail built, the attacks on the union, I think we've lived it at such a pace that maybe some of that has passed some of our members by in some senses. But did the union make a mistake? Could we have said at the beginning, look, we want you to support us, be on strike, but there's going to be huge change. We're going to sign up to loads of things you're not going to like. Did we make some mistakes in the way we position things along the way?
Is that for me, Chris? Sorry. Look, I think it's fair to say that suggesting as the situation develops, as long as we did, that there was going to be a no strings pay deal. I think that was obvious that wasn't going to be achievable. One of the things that is still a mystery to me personally, and I'm sure to a lot of our people, is why did Royal Mail walk away from the original pathway to change agreement? Why did they create the situation where we had to have such a bitter dispute? And I still think that there's things that maybe will come out later in time to come, in years to come, that will explain some of that. But it wasn't the union that wanted to have that dispute. We tried our very best to get our members a pay deal. When we started out that claim of a no strings pay deal, it was the right thing to do. Whether or not 2 ballots in the end was the right thing, we got back into talks when we said to the business, well, let's sit down and talk about change and talk about pay. And I suppose, the experience in the end is that you have to deal with the issues that are in front of you. And the only way we was going to do that ultimately was by having a pay and change deal. And, when we got back into the talks, we did accept that, and we had that debate with our members at that time. So look, I'm willing to accept some criticism about, we argued something at the start and we weren't able to sustain that. But I think that, you argue the best position at that point in time, and what you have to do is react to the circumstances. And if the circumstances change, then if you don't deal with the changing circumstances, well then, it's ludicrous. You're not representing your members. This thing about marching people halfway up the hill, we've just been through the most bitter dispute, a dispute like no other in the history of Royal Mail. We didn't want to put our members through that. Our members supported us, done a magnificent job in supporting us. And actually, you've got to look at what we were up against here. We're up against a company who did not want, in the end, an agreement with this union. They lied in front of Parliament. Let alone the lack of integrity and the acts of bad faith towards the members and towards the union. This was tough because we were dealing with people who showed no integrity whatsoever during the course of this. But we had to hang in there. We had to deal with it. We know that, to walk away from it, or to just think that we could carry on striking and somehow things were going to change. We got where we got to, and many of the concessions, you'll remember this, everybody watching will remember this. What companies do when they got union busters involved, when they took a decision, probably supported by forces higher than Royal Mail, to take the union out, to take out reps in the workplace. That's what it was about. When they did that on the basis that they told every single manager that you will never have to deal with the union again. And they didn't achieve that plan. Getting an agreement means that we're back in the game. What we got to do now is have the confidence that we can address some of the mess that they've created by using the agreement. The alternative isn't going to get any better. So, we didn't take people marching them up the hill in that sense. We set out some very clear issues. One of the big things that we didn't want was the company to replace our members with self-employed workers. That was their plan. Their plan was always to move to a separate parcel company and let Royal Mail wither on the vine. We've stopped that again. But the only way we're going to do that is having the honest discussion about our members doing that work. And I think that if we have confidence in the agreement, we can get back to a place here where some of our members will see the benefit of perhaps doing some of these shifts later in the afternoon on a rotate as additional earnings opportunities, or with better attendance patterns. That's all up for grabs now under the terms of this agreement. So, I don't accept that we've marched people up the hill. We've been in a bit of dispute. And what I will say, you tell me another dispute going on at the moment, you tell me another dispute that's been as bitter as this one, where you come out at the end of the day when the stakes are that high and everybody gets everything they wanted. It don't happen. And what we've got is the best possible agreement in very, very difficult circumstances. And we're dealing with that in an honest way. And the best solution here is for our members to vote for the deal.
Thanks, Dave. Excellent. And as I said to you, we want we'll go as long as it takes tonight. So people who are letting us know that you're voting no, that you are voting no, give us some rationale. Give us some sort of some sort of background. How are we going to do? Are we going to strike our way out of it? Or are we going to negotiate our way out of it? Let us know, because I want to put those comments to Dave. I want to put those comments to Andy. We want this to be your session. So it's good to hear that. Andy, get a lot of people. We've got hundreds of our representatives and members who are suspended, dismissed, been treated absolutely abhorrently throughout this dispute. Would obviously an update for them, because people are worried sick. Some of our reps have been and members have been suspended for months, not knowing what's going on. Some of them have been dismissed for months now. Where are we with the independent conduct review?
First and foremost, the way that the Royal Mail has treated, and Parcelforce, the Royal Mail Group as a whole, has treated members and representatives over the last 9 months is absolutely despicable, disgraceful. But an integral part and a key part of this agreement is the Faulkner Independent Review, Lord Faulkner. And we've now lodged 205 consent forms for reps and members that have been dismissed or had serious disciplinary measures against them to go into that review, because we want to get justice for those people. It's absolutely vital that we can get these people, our reps, members that have been dismissed on trumped up charges, that we get justice for them. And that's a massive part of this agreement. And that should commend in itself should commend the agreement to our membership. The employer's attitude was to break the heart, break the will of our members. And they set about doing that by attacking people in the workplace, and the likes of which we have never seen before. So one of the reasons why the agreement took so long to reach is that we were pushing hard that there needed to be a proper mechanism for these cases to be reviewed independently and with somebody with standing within the legal community to do so. And you can't get anybody higher in the legal profession as the former cabinet minister who was a senior legal person in the United Kingdom. So Dave and I are meeting with Faulkner again next Thursday. We're going to carry on pushing on the cases. There was a pause whilst we delayed the ballot to resolve Section 2.5. The company's now written and confirmed that they're re-engaging on the Faulkner review, and we got to move that forward, and we got to get justice for our people, because the way Royal Mail and Parcelforce treated our representatives and members was absolutely deplorable. They should hang their heads in shame, but the agreement is the way forward to getting justice.
Andy, mate, one of the things I wanted to put to you though is, two things actually. How confident are we that we're going to get justice from Lord Faulkner? Because that's a lot of faith to put into an individual. And secondly, should we be even putting this ballot out to vote without should we be even having an independent review? Some of these cases are that outrageous. Should we be saying, get him back in work and then we'll talk about the vote?
Well, first and foremost, the employer wouldn't have agreed to the independent review unless it was linked to the agreement. So we had to get them to agree to the concept and principle of the independent review, and then it became an integral part of the agreement. They've got to honour that now. They've got to put those case files before Faulkner, and we will be able to make our submissions, and we'll be able to argue that the trumped up charges around social media, around picket line activities, all these allegations that are completely and utterly spurious, outrageous, and over the top attitude towards discipline, where in normal circumstances, if somebody had done something wrong, they might have got a slap over the wrist. What do? They summarily dismiss people. So look, we are confident we're going to get the outcome, but we're not complacent about that. We're not leaving any stone unturned, and we are investing a lot of time, energy and effort, and we've got a full team back in CW headquarters working on the cases. We've got divisional reps and regional secretaries reviewing the case files, and we're going to ensure that we put our best foot forward in arguing for justice. And we are confident that with an independent person reviewing it of Faulkner's standing, we will get justice for many, tens, hundreds, hopefully, of our members. Now, ultimately, the decision will be binding. Will we win 100%? Probably not, but we are very, very confident we will win a massive percentage overall of the cases that we put forward, because we believe that the employer is out of order in the way they treated people. This is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before, and that's why it's so important to get into that independent review. And as I say, we will ensure that we make all the arguments, we make the strong arguments, and we expose the employer for the pattern and the way that they went about dismissing people via a gold, silver and bronze command control, all from the centre. And we're not having that. And that's why we've got to get this agreement endorsed and get the Faulkner review up and running properly so we can get justice for our members and reps.
Thanks, Andy. Excellent. Dave, we talked, I talked, in the comments and said, let people let us know, what your routes are out. Thank you for those members who have, because what we've come on here for tonight is have a real good debate with you. David Provan, Dave, is saying that what we need to go do is root out of this dispute is that we jointly go with Royal Mail to the government to reduce the USL to remove Saturdays. Feels that's potentially a viable action. Recognises that we'll lose members because obviously rest day covers etc. But thinks it'll be better for the members that will remain to. And the union should be pushing now for Monday to Friday. And if we delivered that, then the later starts would be less of an issue. So is that a viable thing for the union to be considering at this point, Dave Ward?
Well, I actually think, David, that is a fair debate for us to be having now. And what I think you're going to see as letter decline continues to accelerate, and it's not going to go completely, but it's going to continue to decline a little bit more. There is going to be a tipping point. And, there's a lot of reps in the union now talking about this. The executive has been talking about it. We want to sustain the universal service, and we're going to have a debate about what is the best way economically to do that. And the tipping point comes if you've got declining letters over 6 days. There's going to be a moment where it may well lose more jobs over 6 days than it would if you went to 5 days and condensed those letters into those 5 days. We are looking at this in the round because we're obviously aware of what's happened across Europe and across the world. You know, we're not alone in facing these challenges. I would actually argue we're probably in the best position of any postal union across the world in how we've defended the universal service. But it may well be the right time to change. So if you look at the agreement sets out that we are willing to jointly approach the government with the company to have a proper discussion. So providing that there is a commitment to sustain the USO, I think we are coming to a moment where we may have to consider the 5-day scenario. And I think you're also right that that in itself may help. It's not going to help necessarily the actual later starts happening, later finishes, because what's driving that in truth is the company's decision to back the green agenda. They believe that they cannot continue to use flights. So they're coming off flights. You know, we haven't got a veto on that decision. We've got to deal with the consequences of that decision. And we've mitigated it as much as we possibly can. And we believe we can mitigate it further. But, you know, there's a year away to that point. And I think you've raised something tonight that we should be having a wider discussion on. You know, we want to keep the USO because we believe the infrastructure of Royal Mail is the way to grow the business. But there's definitely a moment coming where, you know, we're going to have to look at the 5-day option. But what I would say to you is that, you know, the impact on jobs as well is going to be mitigated because there's parcels to deliver now on a Saturday and on a Sunday. And we want to see the regulator allow Royal Mail more scope to deliver, you know, parcels through the USO, tracked parcels. And we think that that is the way forward. So look, there's a debate to be had. We accept that. We're not blind to that at all. But it's again about the right time. And probably over the next year, and let's hope by that time as well, there's a Labour government in where we may be able to have a different discussion, which we've been having with the Labour Party in the background, about a completely different model for the future of Royal Mail, of governance of the company. Let's hope that we can find, you know, the right solution to that issue. We've got to have the debate now. I think we're accepting the point you're making.
Dave, I'm going to loop right back to you because it's on later starts. Something raised by lots and lots of members is the exemption process in the documentation, in the frequently asked questions we put out in the agreement that, you know, Royal Mail will be considering, you know, in extreme circumstances, etc. People are on here saying, well, you know, I will physically have to leave this job because I won't be able to pick my children up from school, or, you know, I think David, who asked you question just now, big football fans, you know, people who are actually, you know, in stuff like football and social and family, these aren't like hobbies, these are like lifelong habits, aren't they, which we all would sympathize with and we all enjoy ourselves. So the exemption process, like, I mean, you know, and I think the union's got to be honest and not overpromise on that, but is that going to be a serious discussion, Dave, or is it going to be the same as many members are saying as the current family friendly of, yeah, we've had a look, no thank you?
I think it's our best option of addressing, you know, the genuine cases, and providing we're addressing, you know, the absolute genuine cases, we're confident that we're going to be able to find solutions to that. A lot of this is about using the expertise between now and the actual change. And if you read the agreement, you know, I think the words on the exemption are that Royal Mail are going to strive to support every single person who's got a genuine case. And I think our job is to also support those individuals. And we believe we can mitigate this. You know, we've got some good people in our union who understand how this network operates. Actually, I think we've got people in the union who understand how it operates better than what a lot of the company managers do. And there's going to be a hell of a lot of work that goes on between now and the change next year. And we think we can, what you're seeing in the information we've put out, which we promised we would put out, which was another reason why we suspended the ballot, because that information wasn't there, is you're going to see the worst case scenario. We believe we can improve upon that. And we think that part of improving upon that is to create local solutions that support some people. But do understand David's point. There may be some people who join this job and just their life choices mean that they can't continue. And we really do get that, and we're sorry about that. But, it does come back to that point. I think the honest position is that this company has got to change now. The Royal Mail we all join ain't going to be the Royal Mail of the future. If we think that, there ain't no future for Royal Mail. And that's the reality of the huge shift in the world of communications. That's not down to the union. That's down to the way society is evolving. What we got to do is the best job we can. And we do believe, if you look at Royal Mail's original proposals compared to where we've got them to now, this is the best deal that's on offer. And like I said, we can add to that over the coming year.
Thank you, Dave. Brilliant. Paul Burge has said that these are staged questions. So I don't know if these are staged questions, Paul, what harsh questions would be.
Give us some easy ones then.
I've asked the guys if we bottled it, if we should have taken more action, later start, sick pay. Come on. Let's have a serious debate. Andy, if you could, lots of Parcel Force members asking for an update, a line or two on them on, why they should be voting yes and supporting the union in the ballot.
Well, look, Dave's already mentioned that Royal Mail Group wanted Parcel Force to be a predominantly owner-driver operation, and that they wanted the gig economy. And we faced them across the bargaining table, and they were telling us they virtually wanted everybody delivering parcels for Parcel Force to be owner drivers, and that would save them millions and millions of pounds. So one of our key objectives in this dispute was to cease owner drivers. And if they got away with that in Parcel Force, it would have also extended into the delivery offices in Royal Mail for the dedicated parcel routes as well. So let's be absolutely clear, we have turned that around and been successful in protecting jobs in Parcel Force. Also, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that there's a no compulsory redundancy agreement integral to this agreement until at least April 2025. So that's 2 years of job protection guaranteed, even though that we know that the industry, the service is under a lot of threats and attack by competition. Now, what we've got to ensure is that in the next 2 years, that we create the right environment for that job, the no compulsory redundancy agreement to be extended beyond that date. So, look, Parcel Force is an integral part of this agreement. Every single pay aspect that applies to Royal Mail equally applies to Parcels. They didn't want to give the £500 one-off lump sum to our Parcels members. Davey Robertson, as the officer responsible for Parcels, and Dave Ward and myself, along with the rest of the negotiators, fought tirelessly to make sure that Parcel Force was a fully fledged part of this overall agreement. The generic aspects apply to Parcel Force, and we will ensure Parcel Force has got a future going forward, and that's vitally important for job security.
Can you spot on? Alan's asking, can we have early finishes on a Wednesday as Newcastle are in the Champions League? Good on, Alan. We'll make a 1 week adjustment for you, Alan, because you'll be out of it after that. Next, Dave, I want to speak to you about Royal Mail's finances. A serious question. Like, listen, I've seen you, I've heard you, I've heard Andy, seen Andy, and other members of the union have been on the television, radio, been sat with you, we've done those interviews where we've said Royal Mail are not telling the truth. That Simon Thompson wasn't telling the truth about the financial position of the company. They were handing hundreds of millions to shareholders and pleading poverty. They were handing millions in bonuses to themselves and pleading poverty. We're seeing and feeling it now. Cutting back on overtime, failing revisions, quality of service, etc. There is an air out there that we're being kidded. The union's being kidded along. We've fallen into the trap. After all that time of saying it's not true, all of a sudden we're coming out and saying it is true. Are Royal Mail in a financial crisis or are they not, Dave? If they are, have we contributed to driving them into a financial crisis? And also, why, if not, and it's Royal Mail's fault, why are our members paying the price for that?
All right, so I think it's possible to reconcile two positions here. Where we started out, which was the truth, this company had the best profits they ever posted back in, I think it was May 22, June 2022. almost at the start of this dispute. That was true. And, you know, what they then did, as you know, they gave over £600 million away to shareholders. Unfortunately, that's privatisation. That's what it's about. They looked after the shareholders, and I think there was some other stuff going on in the background, as I alluded to earlier on, about takeover bids and various other things, which I don't think has gone away. And that's that world that we're having to deal with as well. So they did that. At the same time, the other thing they did that was so wrong was they decided that they were never going to subsidise from the parent company, which they now call International Distribution Services. That meant that the money that they were getting in from their international acquisitions, you know, if you was in Germany, if you was in France, they would have used that profit to support the National Postal Service. In the UK, these guys took a decision, one, to give the money away, and two, to not ever subsidise in the future. That's why we say they created this financial crisis. So I think we're absolutely right to have said what we did, and I think they're embarrassed about that. Listen, we've spoke to shareholders, and we actually think a lot of the shareholders share our view that whilst they're in it obviously to make money, I think they understood that those who are in it for a longer term making money, and there are quite a few significant shareholders who have invested for the longer term, I think they would have agreed with us that it was the wrong time for Royal Mail to do what they'd done. So look, the first starting point is when we were saying that, we were telling the truth. So let's move it on. What's happened since then? Well, the work after the pandemic has fallen off a cliff edge. That should have been predicted by their economists. We were telling them that that was likely to happen. I think they knew that, but they still went ahead with their original decision. And, you know, we got into that territory where they were starting to say they're losing £1 million a day. Now, we haven't got access to every single bit of their accounts during the course of that dispute. But when we did start looking at it in more detail, so what did we do? What would you expect us to do? Take their word? No, we didn't. We went out and got independent experts on this, and we got Royal Mail to open the books up. And I suppose the proof in the pudding is that when they announced the profits the other year, that was the figure. And when they've announced the losses this year, that is the figure. They can't lie about that as much as they've lied about lots of other things. When it boils down to it now, we've got to face up to that financial crisis. So how do we deal with that? You know, is the answer to keep going on strike? What is that going to achieve? It's going to be the path to mutual self-destruction. Have we caused that? Well, look, we've got to be honest. When you're in a dispute and you take strike action, clearly there's an impact on that. So Royal Mail themselves say something like 200 million has been lost because of the strikes. Well, the change in their financial position is over £1 billion. So, you know, the decisions they've made are what's inflicted the financial crisis. And here's the other thing. During the course of that, whether it was in a panic, whether it was that they finally decided that the only way forward, as they kept saying, was our business to run, they took a decision not to settle this dispute. They took a decision that the objective was to defeat and destroy the union, particularly in the workplace. And, you know, we've had to deal with all of those things during the course of it. So that's why it's so important that people recognise that the circumstances can change during disputes. The country's economic situation has changed in the background. The cost of living crisis, it has been really, really difficult for people. So, you know, I understand when people say, well, you know, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we carry on? What we want you guys to know is that we weigh everything up. We talk to people out in the field. We get a feeling for where things really are when we make the decisions. And in the financial position that Royal Mail is in now, the only way out of that crisis that they've created is to vote for this agreement and try and work together to introduce change in the right way. It's not going to be easy overnight. No one's suggesting that. But the alternative is worse.
Thanks, Dave. I just saw a comment in the just to pick up, by the way, from a member who was repeated it a couple of times and said, "Can his offices be 2 hour finish time be 2 hours later than all those offices in London?" I want to say to the members that that's not true. Some of the latest finish times in the whole country here in London for a variety of reasons. But let's not fall into that management-led stuff of splitting off areas of the union. We're better than that. Andy, I want to update, if I can, from you for our fleet members. Got quite a few fleet members who are asking in the comments saying, like, what about us? We're a separate we have a separate appendix in the agreement. We've got a separate ballot paper. An update for our fleet members.
Yeah, so the decision of the Postal Executive is that Appendix 4, which is aimed entirely at fleet members, not the LAs that work in fleet, but all other grades that work in fleet, that Appendix 4, there will be the fleet members will be able to vote on that directly. Our fleet members will also have a vote on the overall agreement. So they're going to get 2 ballot papers, one for the agreement and one for Appendix 4. Now, Appendix 4 is about the different pay arrangements than the rest of the membership. So the pay deal is the same for everybody in Royal Mail and Parcel Force, and includes OPGs, MDEC workers, admin workers, LAs, etc. But for fleet, there's a separate pay arrangement and separate hours. Now, we're conscious that there has been a lot of noise about the fleet deal. That's why the fleet members will have the ability to determine their own outcome. It's right that a small group of members, something like 800, I believe, will have the ability to self-determine their outcome by being able to vote on Appendix 4. So we will see what that vote brings. We believe that it's the right deal to protect and keep the work in-house, because you see, this is the other thing, is the company wanted to outsource large swathes of work outside of fleet into the likes of Halfords, and what we need to ensure is that we keep everything in-house. That's why we need to get behind this deal, because outsourcing was a very, very real threat, not just in fleet, but wider than fleet. And this deal seeks to protect and keep work in-house. And that's why we've done Appendix 4. But the fleet members will have their say on that.
Thank you, Eddie. You may have noticed that we've gone past the 7 o'clock. That's because you've still got more questions, and I'm picking them up and we want to answer them. So it's your session, and we've still got a few more bits to go. Dave, Kyle Evero says, can you explain the consequences of a no vote? And I don't think he's been genuine, not saying it's a threat or anything like that. Because I think there's obviously a school of thought that we get a no vote, we return to negotiations, we say, Royal Mail members ain't happy with that. Could you just put everything back to normal and we'll crack on? I mean, I don't know whether worth outlining your thoughts, I'm asking you to outline your thoughts on the consequences of a no vote, and also perhaps think about where Royal Mail were originally. Do you think Royal Mail are going to be up for further talks, or are they going to be back to their original plan? What's that risk here in this ballot, and what's to gain by voting no? Maybe there is something to gain.
Carl, it's a fair question. Well, I think you've probably asked it in the right way, so that everybody is aware of what the consequences of a no vote are. So the first thing I'd say is that the company are likely to revert back to their own positions on change, not the deal that we got now, because they will feel that they've got to move things forward. They'll be under huge pressure because of the financial situation to move things on. So we ain't going to be back in talks in a way that somehow we're going to come out with something different. The consequences of a no vote are that I think will be handing over to Royal Mail the initiative going forward. So they'll use it as the green light to say, well, we can carry on exactly as we were when we said it's our business to run. And I think they'll make harsher decisions rather than sitting around the table. So, I don't see that. And this is where, we've got to have a really serious, honest debate here about the circumstances that we're now trying to deal with. So the financial position is real, the crisis which they're talking about. So how does that help in that sense? Surely the best thing to do now, we've extracted everything we can from the company. The best thing to do now is to get on with the change and influence the change through the agreement. The consequences of a no vote are that we hand everything over to Royal Mail to go and do their worst again. We'll have to respond to that. So I'm not ducking that. We ain't going to just let them do it. But look, it is where we are. It ain't going to get better, is it? I think that from the financial reality that we're dealing with and from the fact that change has got to happen at some point. I think a lot of our members are maybe forgetting that when we signed up to the Pathway to Change, the union went out and argued for a 24/7 network because we knew it was the future. So we're not going to avoid that. So, the consequences of a no vote ultimately are far worse for everybody than voting for this deal. That's the truth.
Thank you, Dave. Andy, quite a sobering one here. David Ladd, who I don't know you, David, but I've seen you supporting the union over a long period of time, always commenting positive, always backing unions. Asked the question, really simple, 5 words: would administration be so bad? And I think, when you get a member like David, who's clearly a sensible guy, who asks, would administration be so bad? Then that tells you a lot about, what's gone on and the way people are being treated and how hopeless people think and the shitty way management are into them and the revisions, the quality of service, the lack of hope. I mean, I'll ask you to answer the question in obviously a genuine way. Would this administration be so bad? But also maybe reflect a little bit on the actions of those managers who have led decent, honest, committed postal workers and trade unions to ask if administration might be a decent option given the current circumstances.
Well, first and foremost, management at the highest level encouraged and I would say let off the leash the most rabid of local managers to attack our members and representatives in the workplace day in, day out. Hence why we've got the worst morale there's ever been and a toxic environment that is going to take a long, long time to turn around. But look, we looked into the very real threats of administration, and that would have been a diabolical disaster for our membership as a whole. We would have lost tens of thousands of jobs. Yes, the government would have come in and done something to protect the USO, but the USO, let's be clear about it, we've already had the question about the USO being perhaps Monday to Friday, not Saturday. In most European countries, the USO is a 3-day service, 3-day-a-week service. We're hanging on to a 6-day service to protect jobs and protect the service. And if the administrators had come in, they would have turned absolutely everything upside down. They would have looked at everything that that's got a cost attributed to it, and they would have cut back on every single thing that goes on in the workplace. The employer would have lost control. The employer would have had no control because the administrators would be running the company and the union would have no influence or control over that. And they would have started off by hiving off bits and pieces. We talk about outsourcing. We talk about work being given up to the competitors. The first thing they would have done would flog off Parcelforce, lock, stock and barrel. They would have outsourced fleet work. I don't wish to be a scaremonger here, but the bottom line is administration would have been an unmitigated disaster for Royal Mail as a whole and for our members. But I do get the point that the question's being asked because, people are looking at this holistically and wondering whether there was a better outcome to this. And certainly administration would have been, the worst case scenario. It would have been a complete and utter nightmare.
Thank you, Andy. Dave, final question, because I'll give you a chance to move into your summing up then. Terry's asking a question. Obviously, you've, both yourself and Andy tonight have talked about, the difficulties with further strike action at this point with the position the company's in you know, and effectively sending our members off a cliff edge, you know, to a point of no return. But Terry, I think, makes a really good point here. He's saying, you know, and I think we've all talked about this in the last couple of weeks right across the union, which is we have never known a situation like this where we reach a national agreement and things don't calm down. You know, that normal period where, you know, managers start going, yeah, we need to back off, let's restore relationships. They keep quiet during the balloting period. You know, they make all of the right soundings, etc. I mean, obviously yesterday we had a decent meeting with them live with our reps and all the managers, but aside from that, the attacks have continued. So Terry's question is, like, if the yes vote goes through, I'm assuming, Terry, you're saying you're voting yes, but if you're not, sorry about that, mate. If the yes vote goes through and things don't change, i.e. the bullying and the harassment and the cuts and the attacks keep proceeding, what are the union going to be able to do to challenge that?
Okay, so I think that we've got to have a mindset now about how we're going to tackle what's happening locally. As I've said to a number of representatives, and we've had, you know, meetings with our branches earlier on this week, we're never going to get any more words on paper that are stronger in terms of the company committing to working with the union, the company committing that the only way we're going to be successful is if we take the workforce with us, the company committing to mutual interest solutions. Now, you know, I think it will change, but we've got to get on the front foot. You know, I'm going to say this in the right way. There's no point in us keep telling each other these situations. What you're entitled to ask is what we're going to do about it. And what I would suggest we do about it now is get our divisions, our branches, our areas to come up with strategies that really do hold them to account on what they've signed up to, and hold them to account on what their own leader has said to each local manager, and then deal with that systematically. And at the same time, I'm going to say this, one way of dealing with it is to come up with our answers to how you improve quality of service and how you restore the USO. That's what we've got the opportunity to do now. So, you know, as frustrating as it is, it's the biggest thing of all. I was talking to some of our people earlier on, and, you know, being honest with you, the most frustrating thing here is the way that they treat our people. Now, we can deal with change. I'm personally not afraid of the change. We're going to have to tackle it. It's the right thing to do. We can deal with pay. You know, we've got a better offer than what we had previously. But that way that they treat people in the workplace, we feel for people on that, and we're doing our utmost to sort that out. But it ain't going to change overnight. Some of these managers that are behaving like that, they're just out of control. Some of them are also useless. They haven't got anything else to offer other than, you know, treating people in the way that they're doing it. They were told, I'm going to come back to this point, that I'm trying to make the case as to why it isn't going to happen automatically. But, you know, because they were told, every single manager, you ain't got to deal with a union anymore. They won't exist. We're getting rid of them. And all of a sudden, you got the leader of the company, who's been part of that message, sitting there saying, you've got to deal with a union. You've got to deal with the industrial relations framework. You've got to find mutually agreed solutions. We've got to restore quality of service. Like we're talking to you tonight, he spoke to every single manager and every single rep, as I did yesterday. So, you know, we've got to work it through now systematically. It's got to be based on the union's organisation growing confidence again and getting back into the workplace and supporting it. I think that the dispute has taken its toll on everybody. There's no doubt about that. We get that, you know, and our local reps in particular are under the real cosh here. So what you got to do now is, me and Andy ain't going to be able to deal with every single office, but the structure of the union can. And I'm going to say to you, I wish you could see some of the meetings when we talk to some of the managers, including your regional managers. They don't sit there suggesting that they ain't going to do what we're asking them to do. They sit there and say, no, that's what we're going to do. We're going to work together. And we actually even have the debate with them. We say, you do know what that means. Yeah, anyone can say we work together. It actually means treating people better. That's what the agreement says. So I'm going to come back to that simple point that we're better off in dealing with this situation, through the agreement and through the recent joint statement on restoring quality of service and the USO, the regulator is all over Royal Mail now. The regulator is investigating Royal Mail. They ain't going to put up with it. There's going to have to be solutions to it. So I think stick with it, and we'll find that solution. But the next step of finding that solution is to vote for the agreement. And then immediately, and now that should be happening, is to get in there and organise, as we always would do, around the statements and not allow ourselves to be victims of this debate about, well, they don't honour statements. We've got a strong enough structure with what's there, and what this guy said the other day. Play that to all the members and hear, firsthand that he's telling people that we've got to work together. We can put that on these managers who are behaving in that way. Please bring it to our attention with the evidence of it as well. Sometimes we don't get, myself and Andy and the national team, we get a lot of people telling us these things, but it's very difficult to pin it down to actual evidence sometimes. So we need that. We need people systematically now addressing these issues with a proper strategy, which is about union organisation, union strength, and our branches doing what they do best. So we will tackle it, and that's the way that we're going to do it.
I'm going to come right back to you, Dave. We got Stephen Watkins. Stephen.
No, Stephen.
Really powerful, strong local reps. Obviously, it fits in with what you've just said there. Stephen's saying we need a strategy for supporting our local reps. We're facing all of the attacks on a daily basis, and we need help. Our local reps, Dave, Andy, they need some help.
Yeah, we know that, Steve, and we know that Steve is one of the people who will be out there doing his very best. Whatever happens, he's going to be out there representing our members. But what we're trying to say to you is it's the union structure that ultimately has to deal with that. Now, we've got ourselves, I think, understandably, through a very bitter dispute to a point where the likes of me and Andy have to front up all of those things in these type of sessions. But we can't do that physically. It has to be the union structure. Now, we have sat down with our divisional reps. We have sat down with our branches. And we are saying, come on, we can do this now. We can develop that strategy that gives the support to the local reps. And we totally get your point, Steve. And let's see some examples of it. I mean, we know for all what is being said, we know there are branches out there who have got back control of that situation. So it's not happening everywhere. The financial position of the company makes it more difficult even for the company, I think, at times. But look, the best strategy now, and we're working on that, we're drawing that up, but that's the divisions have got to be doing that now. The branches have got to be doing it as well. And if we all pull in the same direction on that, you'll get that support, Steve.
Thank you, Dave. Andy, one quick final question for you, if I can. Lots of our members in customer service points, obviously we did in the middle of the dispute, we staged a major intervention. They were going to close them. We got them, with the help of our friends in Parliament, political pressure, industrial pressure. We kept them open, but Royal Mail still attacking them, reducing their opening times, etc. A lot of our CSP members saying, look, where are the union and what are we doing about this?
Okay, so look, just a bit on the last question as well. So Mark Balch and Davey Robertson, national officers, met with the area reps today, and of course, supporting unit reps would be exceptionally high on that agenda. So look, all parts of the union, all parts of our structure are engaging and working together, and we definitely need to provide support for unit reps. In terms of the customer service points, Mark Balch will lead on that, and he is engaging with management on that, and he's doing everything humanly possible to protect jobs, protect the service. I mean, look, we're not going to hold on to absolutely everything in terms of every single customer service point or every single opening hours that we do at the moment, but we are making the case that where there is the traffic, where there's a service required to the customers, that there should be customer service points going forward. And of course, we need to ensure that we protect the people that work in those jobs as well. Many of them have ended up in those roles because of issues around health and such like in terms of the Equality Act. So That's why the agreement reaffirms the MTSF agreement in terms of the processes. The redundancy terms are reduced, and we haven't agreed that. But all other aspects of the MTSF, in terms of redeployment and job protection and everything else, is an integral part of this agreement as well. And that's vitally important for all of our members in the customer service points. And Mark is really on the case, along with his team, and indeed all of our structures as well. So we will do our absolute best to protect those units and the workers in them and the jobs in them.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to come back to you immediately, if I can, for your closing statement to our members tonight. Ballot papers have been dispatched today. We've had confirmation of that from the independent mailing house. We'll probably start landing tomorrow, Saturday, Monday. Your final message to all members.
Well, look, we fundamentally believe that the members should get behind this deal and back this deal. But let's talk about leadership. This union has led the membership in a way that's unprecedented against the attacks that we've faced. We delivered magnificent yes votes in industrial action ballot. We've delivered strike action unprecedented since 1971. And we've done that against the backdrop of a company losing traffic, losing money, that's in crisis. Now, all of that has been done through leadership, but crucially through the members getting behind the dispute and supporting the union. And, a massive thank you from the Postal Executive for all the sacrifice our members have made, all the hard, graft that's gone into this dispute. But we have to make judgment calls. We have to make judgment calls as to when to take strike action and when not to. We have to make judgment calls as to when to accept an agreement and when not to. We could have, I'm not saying we should have, but we could have said, oh, Mr. Thompson, you've made your best and final offer back in November. Oh, we'll accept that. We didn't. We rejected that best and final offer because the Postal Executive believed that that best and final offer wasn't good enough. And we've gone on to be proved correct, because when you look at the best and final offer compared to this agreement, they're chalk and cheese. We have moved management significantly away from many of their objectives, and in doing so, we have ensured this job security and there is a future for our members. We've got to ensure this great service, this industry that's given tens of years of employment for many of our members. We've got to ensure there's a future that we can carry on getting future service, future employment, not just for the people that are there today, but for other younger people coming in. And we have done our absolute best to protect that service, this industry, job security, despite the actions of the employer. Let's not lose sight of the fact that this employer set out to beat the union, beat our members, and to ride roughshod over them. Their mantra, it's their company to run, has been wiped out, has been obliterated by this agreement. The agreement may not be everything that people want it to be, but it's a damn sight better than if we don't have the agreement. And things are not going to change if we reject the agreement. Rejecting the agreement doesn't create a land of milk and honey. Embracing the agreement gives us the best opportunity to change things. May not happen overnight, but it gives us a real opportunity to get in there, hold management to account in every single workplace, and make a different environment where our members have dignity and respect. And that's what we want. We want dignity and respect, and we want job security, and we want a future. The agreement is the way forward for that.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that. Just before I come back to you, Dave, for your final messages, we've been on an hour and a half. I think it's our longest ever session. We want, engineers, I'm thinking, MDEC, customer experience, admin staff. We haven't been able to get to you. Clearly covered by the agreement. Clearly, we got, just for example, cleared off with Carl Maiden, national officer, a separate communication for engineers today, for example. So loads and loads of stuff, coming out here. So, don't think that, we don't catch you all. Obviously, it's difficult to get all those questions in there. Dave, I'm going to hand over to you if I can. I have to say, just before I do that we're now at about 7,500 people are watching right across the union. It's been a really good session across our 3 channels. Been a really good debate. So over to you for your final message, Dave, before I close up the session.
Okay, so we started out by saying that we weren't going to avoid any issue, and we haven't. Chris has questioned us relentlessly. He's put all the points that you're putting forward. what we're asking you guys to do is that when you use your vote, do so on the most informed basis possible. Do so on the basis that you take into account the reality of the circumstances that Royal Mail as a company is in. And we're not making excuses for Royal Mail management there. I hope that's come across today. We feel the same about the management team as you do. I'm sure that there'll be further changes in the not too distant future on that. But we got to make decisions now that are based on those circumstances. So let's explore again some of those. The company have got us in a mess financially. We're in a position now where the only way out of that financial mess is through this agreement. There ain't another route out of it. Secondly, the change stuff is really important, that we understand that this union would have been pushing the need for change, because the opposite to that is that we don't have a company. Royal Mail is in a place now where it has to move forward. And we passionately believe, actually, that it is time to change. Sometimes you're better off grasping that change and moving forward with it. Seen lots of unions in the past who haven't had the courage sometimes to perhaps argue this point. But when we argue it, believe us, that we're arguing it purely and solely because we believe that is what is in the best interests of our members. We've extracted everything we can from this dispute. We can confidently say that through your support, you and us together has shifted this employer on loads of those issues. You know that's true. We've been dealing with vindictive managers. We've now got the opportunity to move forward. We've got the opportunity to settle this dispute. It's not going to make everything easy overnight, but the key point I'll ask everybody to consider on every single issue that we've got to address, do you think that we're going to address it better without an agreement or with the agreement? And the answer to that, any rational person looking at this has got to come down on the side of, we better vote for the agreement now, move forward together with our members and the union, and deal with these issues through the structures of the union and deal with change in the best way we can. The agreement, as Andy said, we're not saying that it's everything we wanted. We completely understand and recognise that there's some really difficult issues in this agreement. But truthfully, that is the best agreement that we're going to get. And it's time now to settle this dispute. I think the vast majority of our members understand that point. So please make sure you vote. Please make sure you use your vote by taking the most informed decision you can. And we hope that you will vote for this agreement and stick with the union going forward. It's the best way for all of us to turn this industry around. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Andy. I think, in summing up to close the session, I think this session was excellent. I think it's a union at its best. Real questions, real answers. But as Dave and Andy have said, it's over to you. Just want to bring you one thing before you go. I think it's worth us saying that however you intend to vote, please don't do yourself or the union down, because that's the sort of attitude that empowers the bosses. I want to leave you with a quote and some reflections. The 31st of August, 2022. The CW's self-centered actions with the wider trade union movement is putting thousands of jobs at risk. There will definitely be no improved offer. 31st of August 2022. The offer at that point, got this information from our good friend Tony Boucher, executive, 10,000 compulsory redundancies, increased owner drivers in Parcel Force, owner drivers in Royal Mail, complete flexibility across all of our functions, 3 hours later starts for everybody, data used to track you like a robot, no CW involvement locally, no independent conduct review, mandatory Sunday working, removal of Sunday premium, removal of all allowances, mail centre closures, every single one of those things defeated by you. Where did that quote come from? Former Royal Mail CEO Simon Thompson. Whatever happened to that guy, eh? So as Dave says, and everyone says, the executive's recommendation is that you vote yes. But as Dave and Andy have both said tonight, whatever way you vote, make sure it's on the most informed basis possible. Take it easy, everyone, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks, everybody.